Okay, I want to welcome everyone to our March 2019 Technology Lunch and Learn. A couple first times. First of all, this is the first time for us to host it here in the Hub, so we're really excited about that, but also the first time that we have student presenters. So Shane Shadrick, Haley Martin, Mary Losey, our students, our Residency 1 students currently, but they were in my YoEd 3300 problem-based instructional strategies last semester, and a group project is one of the requirements, and when they presented this, I thought, oh, this would be perfect for Technology Lunch and Learn. So their presentation is on game-based learning. Thank you for coming out on this rainy day, and I'm going to turn it over to them. Y'all come on in, have a seat, join us.
Hello, I'm Harley Martin, as stated, not Haley, but it's okay. We're going to watch this little video before we start.
Game-based learning is becoming a growing topic among HR and L&D professionals worldwide. It has been used for developing technical skills for a long time now, but the appearance of game-based solutions for soft skills development while game-based learning has caught the attention throughout the market. In the rush, some concepts are getting confused, for example, gamification and game-based learning. We can use gamification to help our training processes, but gamification is not a training tool itself. Gamification uses game mechanics to engage students in our training efforts. Some of the gamification techniques used are competition, stories, achievement, level, status, and rewards. We can certainly use these techniques to increase motivation, make our training fun, engage students, and improve completion rates, but they will not help to make students learn. The learning process requires a concept to be learnt, the ability to put the concept into practice, and the possibility of receiving personalized feedback as to visualize the results of our performance. That is where game-based learning comes onto the scene. Game-based learning happens when the game itself is teaching the student. Imagine the story of a game or its characters are teaching you concepts. Suppose the game integrates a simulation that allows the students to practice those concepts and receive personalized feedback. Then the learning is happening through the game. The game is ensuring experiential learning is taking place. Some role plays, simulations, or group dynamics are examples of game-based learning used in the past. Video game technology has boosted the possibilities of these tools.
So some examples of this are some things that we may have already used, like Duolingo, Minecraft is something that I personally didn't think was an option. Brainscape, Kahoot, and Top Hat. Why should we use game-based learning in our classrooms? It's very adaptive. It can change according to your classroom. It can move with you. And it helps students have a more enjoyable learning experience. You know, it takes us away from the whole lecture-based thing that we're going on that we're trying to get out of. And it allows for so many different multiple learning styles to be implemented and teaching styles. And you can definitely use it across curriculum. It's very easy to just plug it in. And it allows for, to me, the last one's very important. It allows it for a safe environment for failure. It allows them to experiment. It allows them to fail at something and try again and keep trying, and they're not going to get reprimanded for it. And I think that's a very important aspect to have. Some challenges with this, with game-based learning, it takes some time to build some of these games if you don't already have a game yourself, so it's time-consuming. Some administrations may think that it's a wasted effort because you're using the word game, so they may think that it's not going to coincide with the classroom. There's not really a budget that's set out for it. It's really just how much you want to put into it. So there's not really a set price, which is good, but can be bad if you really want to do a game and it has very expensive parts to it. If you want to do it through the school, grants, so you have to talk to administration, kind of pull them in. And of course, all the rest of these. And the last one, you have to have a balance of all of the educational, the difficulty and the fun. You don't want to have too much fun because they're not going to learn anything, but you don't want it to be too difficult to where they're not going to learn anything either because they're not going to understand and they're not going to want to try it because it's too hard. You want to take from
All right. So here are some of the benefits of game-based learning. You can use these games to meet learning outcomes. So you can use these games that you create to align with your objectives and your learning that in your classroom. Learning comes from playing the game. So as they play, they learn material as each stage of the game, each level of the game can be accomplished using commercial or education-oriented games. So you can use like many different games to accomplish learning goals. Promotes critical thinking and problem solving. And they can be accomplished with digital or non-digital games. So you can use like a board game, or you can use like digital media as well. And it involves simulations to allow students to experience the learning. And gamification is a part of game-based learning, and is the addition of game-inspired elements to a classroom. And what this does, it applies game mechanics to a non-game environment to encourage behavior. It typically incorporates badges, awards, and achievements. So instead of like, your typical standard method of grading, you'd get like a level or achievement or award for doing an assignment. And experience points may be used as a substitute for grades, and these could provide students with a choice in the learning path. So you could argue that gamification can allow students to have more of a choice in their learning in the classroom. And why should we use gamification? What benefits does it have? Student choice, as we said earlier, it allows students to have more choice in the learning process. Flexible goals. If a goal can't be met, like you can change it, And then you as a teacher can track individual progress, and you can use XP, experience points. You can have limitless points. So you don't have to have like a standard, you can have this many. You can do as much as you'd like. Gamification strategies, online, offline, discussion boards, optional for additional XP. XP can go to extra help, early draft, skip an assignment. Use of anonymous discussion boards can allow for real-time discussion. Quizzes, you can create interactive narrative that allows each question to be built onto the next one. And Jeopardy-style games for review. So there's plenty of options for learning with gamification. And here's a little video about a game-based learning game used in a history class.
What's interesting is it's sort of showing you how, already compromised cities are going to be more vulnerable to other kinds of things. Okay, now, this is kind of bad because we now have an outbreak. We talk a little bit about, we had Dr. Ross come in and talk about the history of disease. In particular, she talked about the Columbian Exchange, and she talked about the Black Death. She talked about, other more recent things as well. Thinking about the spread of disease, and especially in a modern way, and you might not be able to see, but Sydney connects to LA. And it's just one turn to move from Sydney to LA. So it's also getting them to think a little bit about, travel and how things can be spread, and not necessarily only disease, but how we think about trade, how we think about economics. That's one of the big things that I talk about too with them before we play the game, is sort of the globalization of the economy. They're really neat little avenues to get into different stuff, and you don't even really have to spend a whole lot of time playing them. If you just sort of let them play for about an hour, and then you can have all kinds of neat discussions about those sorts of things. So this idea of losing in a game versus losing in class, and how you're willing in a game to take more risks and to learn more and do different things, and that losing is okay. You know, I mean, it might not feel really good, but it's okay, and it might get you spurred to do something more. Whereas, you know, how they deal with losing in a class, in other words, getting a poor grade, you know, how that is different from losing in a game, and how we as educators have to sort of help them to understand that there's a safe place to fail in class, and that failure is not necessarily bad, that it can lead to learning, and it can lead to something that's very, very, you know, important and useful for them. Like I said, we had a group of professors. I was playing it with them before I did it with the class, and we had so much fun that they decided they were going to do it on their own. So they got kind of frustrated that they didn't win, so they had to beat the game and came back and played it again. They really enjoy this one.
All right, here are some steps for implementing game-based learning in your classroom. Just determine the purpose of game-based learning for your class. So you have to know what you're going to be doing. And play the game yourself and make sure it aligns with your learning objectives and standards. That is super important. If the game's just fun and it doesn't have any learning purpose, then it's not really doing its job. Make sure it meets the expectations of parents, administration, communicate with them, and why the game is a valuable tool for your class. Because some parents, you know, they might think, oh, it's a game. What are you going to learn from a game? You know, but you have to explain to them, this game will, you know, keep them more engaged, and it'll help them learn in a different way. And then dedicate time to your class to consistently play. And then use the results of assessments from the game to inform your teaching. So just use what you get from the game to improve on it, and improve on your teaching and their learning.
All right. Hi, my name is Mary. So I'm going to talk to you about some really specific details, and especially one that's one of my favorites is Minecraft. So how many of you know what Minecraft is? Raise your hand. Yeah, how many of you have at least heard of it, heard the name? Yeah, it's a really, really cool game. It came out many years ago. I've been playing it probably since I was 10. But it is very adaptable, and there have actually been programs that have built entire game-based learning and gamification upon Minecraft, which is something that mostly is considered a commercialized game, you know, that you just play for fun. So let me show you that real quick. So this is an entire website. Minecraft actually took it upon themselves, with the help of some educators and some grants that were written, to take advantage of this opportunity and really adapt it for especially math and science.
Minecraft is changing the way people learn already. It's already having a major effect.
I've described it this weekend as an awakening.
I was truly learning with and from my students.
These teachers see the excitement with the students, the level of engagement. I think it makes them realize that this is what I got into teaching for.
If the kids are so incredibly passionate about this game, there's obviously value in it to them.
It's not that it helps kids learn different. They've been learning that way. They've been learning through gaming. It helps us see the way that they learn different. And I think that is the biggest game changer.
Minecraft is the one tool I found where the collaboration is incredible.
There is a lot of potential where we have students and teachers can come into a same space and interact together.
Hey, wait, is this part right here, this part right here?
When we give them the license and just give them the challenge, we want you to do project X, Y, or Z. Teach us what you know about biomes. Show us a sustainable build. Show us what you know about volume. They're very comfortable in that environment, and it's really powerful to watch that happen.
I've never seen a more empowering tool for kids to use to create.
The students have a lot of ownership. They have a lot of autonomy, a lot of agency in that space.
You talk about the same experiences that computer programming gives, where you're allowed to fail and you're allowed to do things. Minecraft provides that same experience. My favorite line is build a house, and the magic happens when you do that. To walk into the world that a child has created and to see their excitement to watch their eyes light up. It is something that you honestly have to experience at least once in your life.
They are able to connect what they're doing, their actions, in this seemingly play game environment, but they begin to make connections to their learning. And when they're doing that, you're only bounded by your imagination. The sky is really the limit.
It's so often, I guess, these times in education when we feel like we can't take a leap and do something that isn't planned, that isn't tested, that isn't something that fits into the confines of a textbook. But when you look at kids loving learning and learning that we didn't define, nothing speaks louder than that.
My feeling is let's tap into the way kids learn, let's embrace that and let's bring that into the classroom. And when we can do that, we've really, made something happen.
The dynamic of the classroom has really changed.
It's refreshing to see that kids want to be creative. Kids want to have this just clean, open slate to do whatever they can or want or dream.
That doesn't happen in classrooms normally. But I think more and more Minecraft is going to be able to help people figure out a collaborative digital future that they would have never imagined otherwise.
So with Minecraft, that was mostly focusing on coding and math and science, which obviously is where it connects the most with. The game is basically a free, open world, creative type of game that is based on blocks and cubes, so it's completely, it's meant to look like that. It looks like an older game, sort of nostalgic in that way. But the important thing is, while you can let them play it, you can give them tasks like build a house, see what you can do with these materials. It's important as teachers that we connect that to the material we are wanting them to learn. You need to make sure to reinforce that after they play and talk to them about that and have them make those connections. I'm a music ed major, so what I find fun is Minecraft actually does have a feature called music blocks, which you can actually create and build these massive structures that sequence together, and you have to figure out how to sequence them together. It's actually quite difficult. And they can take hours and hours, and you can make songs, like pop songs. And there are a lot of YouTube videos of people doing Parts of the Caribbean and whatever newest songs on the radio. And so that's a really, really fun feature that I like in music. And you can build chords, and you can do all of that through Minecraft. So that's something a lot of people don't know, and I find really entertaining about it. So there's a bunch of different kinds of games you can play with your kids. You can build a lot of these. You can adapt them completely to whatever you want them to be. One-time games are games that maybe you just introduce. It's not something that you will do consistently. It's just something to introduce a concept maybe, and then that's it. That's all you need it for. Real-life games, some more role-playing games where you have them interact with stuff in real life and try to problem solve that way. You have single-player games, games that are more prepared, computer simulations. Persistent games, games that you play consistently if you're trying to reinforce something, or maybe it's a single player game that has them go through their own objectives and they're all on their own track. You have a lot of electronic games, storyline, thematic, and especially feedback and no feedback. So most of the time you're going to want them to be able to give feedback, or you give feedback to them through the game or afterwards, so that you can track their progress. That's something that's really cool about it. You can see what they're achieving at and what they're not. That way you can adapt your teaching and use the assessment to inform what you're going to do next with that individual child. So there are quite a few teacher-designed games. I only pulled up a couple. And this first one is called Quodeck. And this one is one that you do have to pay for. It's a subscription service, as most of these are. So this one's sort of cool. It's pretty simple. Has anybody heard of Quodeck before? No, it's not one that's like Kahoot or Duolingo that's used a lot. But it's very simple to use. It has all these small learning game libraries in it, and basically allows each student to track individually how they're doing, and you to access their profile and see how they're doing with each game.
Yes. So do they, each of those little spots, is there some sort of challenge and then they move on, kind of like Mario or something?
Yeah, exactly like that. And that way, you can see, okay, maybe they're needing help connecting this with this, and you can, in real life, then help them with that, and then see if they can achieve it through the game after. And then I think the other one. This one is called Socrative. Has anybody heard of this one? This one is actually really popular. I love this. I think this one is really cool. It's really clean looking. It's simple to use. It's a classroom app designed for the teachers, and this one really allows you to customize it to whatever you need it to be for your classroom. I've seen a lot of elementary school classrooms use this in different ways, mostly for English and reading. But it's really good. It's easy.
It's sort of an assessment platform, I think.
Mm-hmm. And it's very simple to use. The kids love it. It's colorful, pops. So those are two that are pretty common. So assessment in game-based learning, you want to make sure you're able to assess it, because especially for your administrators, they want to see something from this. They don't want to just walk into your classroom and see all the kids playing Catan and say, what are they learning about? So you have to have some hard assessment feedback that you're able to get from these. So you have to think about that really carefully before you introduce it to your kids. Because it is good to have fun, and that's what these are meant to do, is engage them without them feeling like they're being engaged. It's good because it's learning, but they're having so much fun doing it, they don't even notice. And then they're like, oh yeah, I did learn that. And that is sort of the effect you want from this, because then they look forward to it. Then they're not gonna fight you whenever you're like, we're gonna do something new today. And they're like, something again? You know, you don't want that attitude about it. And so you want to make sure they feel as comfortable in the games, that you're really easy when you explain them. But as far as a true formal assessment goes, we do have, we do have a video about how to better understand how to do that through the games.
Playing games in school is helping me learn better than I ever had before in any other subject in other schools I've been to in my entire life.
Do we have any more green? Where's the key?
Wait, so how about the top is right here? I'll start like.
Wait, are we supposed to do it on this side, or do we do it on the back?
Only thing you're making in this round is a good continent. Possibly an isthmus if you earn it, islands and peninsulas. So it will be very blank except for your continent name.
To somebody who's never seen Galactic Mappers before, it basically looks like a class-wide map-making / art project where students are working in teams to build different sections of a gigantic map of the world. The better the students do, the more complex their continent can get, because they will keep earning. And then the more they earn, the more challenging the game becomes. And if they want to have a really fully developed continent, that need to know within them is going to start to seek out this additional information.
North,
South,
east,
west.
You have a landmass?
We have one, and then we can make this into another.
Well, that would make you have two continents. Is there another way?
Yes, we have another. We have different people around the whole thing. Oh, just cut this out, like here.
Okay, group number 1 and group number 5. You guys have an isthmus. You need to somehow share that isthmus between the two of you. You guys can communicate amongst yourselves to make that isthmus work.
An embedded assessment is a form of assessing students' knowledge while they're engaged in the learning process. So rather than giving them a test at the end of a unit, we try to find ways of assessing them while the learning is actually happening.
Rubric. Your group will be graded on the following qualities. Map skills.
It demonstrates clear knowledge of category and physical geography while playing the game. Being positive in the group. It's up to 10 points. Yeah, be positive. Okay, so now what?
So what I do in advance is I create a rubric with certain things I'm going to look for. Part of what I'm assessing them on does include content knowledge. It includes application of that content knowledge. It also looks at systems thinking and design thinking. And I assess them just by either listening to the types of things that they're saying about the different pieces. So if I can hear a student explain to another student, why they want to put certain things in a particular spot, or correcting students on certain map technique or something, those are good clues as to that student's depth of knowledge.
Sunny Bacon is a continent where aliens like Kang and Kodos eat a lot. So that's why it's called Sunny Bacon. It's based on breakfast.
Sunny Bacon has a lot of vegetation and hills and a lot of mesas. Yeah.
Galactic Mappers forces students to use their knowledge of maps to apply it to something that hasn't been created before. So they're designing a map from the ground up, and the maps some of these groups design, they get this done in 20 minutes. You know, in a group of 4 or 5. So it allows them to really make sure that they're properly designing a good map with sensible map components, and also incorporating physical geography as well as cartography skills. So Galactic Mappers tests that.
There is a peninsula on this continent. Can you show me where the peninsula is? Excellent job. And you have one other card. I see you have an isthmus card. Where's your isthmus leading to? Where's the isthmus? Very good, excellent.
In the discussion phase of Galactic Mappers, it really gets them to think about maps in a collaborative space and sort of imagine the possibilities of a spot on Earth. So it becomes more than just making a map, it's also designing a living, breathing planet, and it gets them to start thinking about the components of that planet in a different way, and the possibilities if we were to put people on this planet.
So the thing about Galactic Mappers, that looks like so much fun to me. I would love to play that, and the kids seem to really like it. So those kind of games, what's scary about game-based learning and gamification, it can make some people uncomfortable when they're first doing it in their classrooms, is you have to let go. You let them go, you let the kids go, you let them explore, and you know, some kids might not get it immediately and you will have to help them or have a peer help them. But it's independence. But I think it's important to teach our kids that in whatever subject matter. You can introduce that in so many different ways. And just whenever they get to take ownership of something like that, they tend to love it and enjoy it, and they will actively seek out learning after that. And for me personally, that's what I want to inspire my kids. So I think it's a really cool thing, and there are really good ways to build in assessments for yourself and talk to them. And it is a lot of, you know, informal, just listening, giving feedback, observing them. But that way, Edutopia is a great resource to go to. They have a lot on game-based learning, so that's what that video was from. This is our original presentation from class, we did have some time set aside to build your own game. But that's the end of our presentation.
What about questions? Anybody have questions they'd like to ask?
I guess these are all awesome. Like I'm excited to go look up these different games and resources. Are there any others that you didn't link to that you have experience with, or just as a person who does gaming?
Yeah, Kahoot is one that is probably the most commonly used across the board by people in pretty much all age groups. It's accessible from 5th grade up, or younger if you trust your kids with that. But so Kahoot is a great one. It's completely designed by you. That helps with assessment as well because it's literally a quiz, but it's live. It's anonymous for them to a point, so you can edit it for that. That's one I really like. But for me personally, if you're an English teacher, Scrabble is great. Scrabble is the best thing in the world. So for me, those are really the only other ones, the main ones. But there's thousands of things out there, and a lot of teachers just create their own. They'll take an idea and they'll just make it completely their own and do it whatever their kids need. That's what's good about it.
I'm doing observation with a middle school teacher who took a board game called Concept, and she blew where you give clues and then someone has to guess the concept. She blew it up big and laminated it, and the kids, instead of these little game pieces, they use expo markers on this laminated board, and she just has them do it with concepts related to the unit, and they love it. And I watched them do it, and I didn't even really understand what they were doing, and I was impressed because they're 6th graders, and I was like, Okay.
If you can get them on board, they'll do anything. And if you explain it to them clearly and you make it, you know, it's a game, and it is a game, and you make sure they understand that. It's like, this isn't just, you know, a review session, this is helping you. And yeah, they'll get into it. They really do enjoy these kind of things.
Any other questions? All right, well, let's give them a round of applause. Oh, another one. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Autumn.
It's kind of late.
Go ahead.
So a lot of these I noticed were technology-based. What about if you have a lower income school that doesn't have access to all of those?
Absolutely, and that is the bigger problem, is because usually when kids, especially the current generation, think games, they think their phones and iPads, which is fine. And for some schools that have the funding for that, that's great. But quite a few don't. So games like Galactic Mappers, like that last one we saw, that one's completely, you know, hands-on, creative, no technology involved in that, and it's really whatever you can come up with. That's really the only thing that limits it, is your budget for Hobby Lobby and what you can come up with in your head, and especially depending on, you know, subject matter, that can also affect it quite a bit. But there's so much you can do. It's insane. There's whole blogs dedicated to this kind of thing, to gamification and game-based learning. It's really interesting to go and just read it. So yeah, there's a lot of options for people without the technology access.
As a classroom teacher, as a science teacher, I taught chemistry, and midterms were required. And so I would have my students create review games that we would play prior to that midterm. And so, you know, getting your students involved in creating games that they would enjoy playing, and then we would set up a time of sort of rotating and playing. So I'd like to emphasize that you don't have to know everything about technology or a particular game. You can learn from your students, you can have them create, but also finding something you like and just starting somewhere and trying it out. And I appreciate Mary and Shane and Harley bringing up the point about making sure that you're meeting the standards, that it's, you know, fun's important, but that's the point is the learning, that we're meeting the learning targets. And don't be limited by your own creativity, for sure. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Great job, guys.